Darren Gordon from Centaurus Metals. He's a chartered accountant with over 25 years of experience as a senior resources executive, including extensive involvement in financing resource projects from both a debt and equity perspective. Mr. Gordon has over 13 years' experience operating in Brazil and has a deep understanding of the regulatory framework and general operating environment needed to advance resource projects, right through development to production. This in-country expertise assists in guiding the Centaurus team in its development plans in northern Brazil, where the project's ESG credentials and the broader global transition to decarbonisation are front of mind for the company. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you, everyone, for coming along this afternoon and for Centaurus to be able to update everyone on the progress of our Jaguar nickel sulphide project in northern Brazil. I think some of those things in the intro are very important as far as being able to get a project moving in Brazil, and we're making a very strong fist of the work that we need to do to bring this project into production, and we really do think that it's going to be a very significant project for the company and also for the green nickel market. So when you look at what we've got, we do have a very significant resource which is on the way to becoming world class. It's already very large, and we are doing that in the northern part of Brazil in the Carajás mineral province. That gives us some great benefits as far as access to infrastructure, because Vale have operated in this region now for over 50 years, and there are some very large mining projects located in this area. Scoping studies last year have shown the economics of the project to be very strong, and we are now working through definitive feasibility study work and all the things that go with that. We are well funded, and we have a really strong team in Brazil to help us bring this project forward. But as we go through this presentation today, it's really, I guess for me, I really want to try to hit home the size and scale of this project, and I think it probably gets underestimated sometimes when it's put on the world stage. So hopefully I can draw out some of those key attributes for that. We have a market cap of about $420 million with $60 million in the bank as at the end of 30 June. I think when we come to look at the economics of the project, you'll probably see that that valuation, in our view, is significantly underdone. We have a pretty strong register, and we've got some great support from the brokers out there with research coverage. Brazil, importantly for us, where we're located in the northern part there, has a very favourable tax rate. We'll be operating under a 15% tax rate for the first 10 years of production. The royalty system in Brazil is very encouraging for developing projects, with 65% of the government royalties going back to the municipalities where those projects are located. So in the Carajás, which is a remote part of Brazil, whilst being a lot of infrastructure, you do have these municipalities that are looking for employment opportunities for their residents to really bring along what's happening in those communities, and we have really good buy-in from that. Last year we were entered into the Strategic Minerals Program in Brazil. That was a new program that the government introduced just to help streamline and get through the environmental approval processes. We haven't needed to call upon that process yet, but it is there and available to us as needed. But one of the big things I think that's happening in Brazil, and it will probably become more prevalent over time, is the fact that they really are a renewable powerhouse, with 80% of their grid power coming from renewable sources. So if you're in this position of looking at electrification of industry, EVs, and looking to supply commodities into that market, we're doing that with a very big head start, with 80% of the power coming from renewable sources, which is lending itself to very low emissions. The market is strong. There's been enough people that have talked about the nickel market already over the last couple of days, but what I would say is that we are in a favourable environment in a growing market. We are looking to produce nickel sulphate from this project, so adding value to the nickel concentrate that we produce on site, and keeping our emissions as low as we possibly can to really benefit and, extract maximum value out of this growing demand that we see coming. At the time of the scoping study last year, we did some work with Scan in London just about where our emissions footprint was going to be. We are right down the bottom end of that curve, principally driven by the fact that you are sourcing your project on renewable power base. And right now we are a net sequester of emissions. That's coming from the fact that we own the land where we are located. That has areas that have forest and vegetation on it, which we will protect, which enables us to keep that position right now. I think as we go through, the emissions will come down even further, and there's some things we're doing through the course of the feasibility study to help demonstrate that. From an environmental approval perspective, the environmental impact assessment has been lodged. That's going through the normal process right now. We've also lodged the PAE, which is the mining lease application, so that's underway. So all of these key approval processes are running their course as it stands, and we'll look to get those starting to flow through towards the back end of this year or early next year. As I alluded to, we've accessed some land in that area. There's essentially cattle grazing country, so really no population bases that we need to deal with of any significance, and we really are benefiting that community where we are working. With that, there's about 115 people of our own on site. We've been having 15 drill rigs operating for the last 6 months. With that comes a number of drilling contractors, so it's a pretty significant site right now with up to 280 to 300 people on site at any given time. There's a growing part of the workforce that is female, and we're very pleased with that, working in conjunction with the University of Maribor on the internship program for geology, mining and engineering. So as I said, from a social perspective, the work and I guess the benefit that this project brings over time is going to be very significant, up to $400 million in royalties and taxes that will flow into that immediate region where we are located. And that really does make a difference. It does create and change lives, and it's particularly creating a lot of jobs. So the Carajás, for those that are unaware, it's a very prolific mineral belt. Some of the biggest mines there, S11D, Salobo, principally operated by Vale, an enormous amount of infrastructure. You can fly on a 737 jet into Parabas airstrip, sealed roads, high voltage power, plenty of water. And as I said, we're on cattle grazing country, so really no vegetation of any significant note. Combine that with the fact that we are very, very close to the key markets where that nickel sulfate product is going to be used into Europe or North America, working on the grid power that is renewably based. We're going to have low cost power and low emission power and do that from a very good location. So the scoping study last year, when we did this, our resource was about 550,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal. That has grown since that point in time, but these numbers are all based on that. I'll let you read through that at your leisure, but they are very significant cash flows that will come from that at $10 a pound. You can see the economics there. That's probably generating in the order of about 450 million EBITDA per year, Australian dollars. So that's significant relative to where we are from a market cap perspective, and our challenge over the next little while is obviously to deliver on all the key milestones for this project and get it to a point where we are producing the cash that supports those valuations. Right now we're in the middle of our definitive feasibility study work, looking to deliver that by Q1 next year. The footprint of this project is really getting quite significant. The pits are coalescing with one another from where we were in the scoping study. They're now looking like they'll extend over a strike extent of about 3 kilometres. The widest part of those pits potentially could be up to 1 kilometre wide, and we will, at the final depth, might be over 300 metres deep. And that's just in the pit before we start to tackle any of the mineralisation that continues into the underground. So just have a think about that relative to this big pit that sits out the back of us here in Kalgoorlie, and think about the scale of that sort of operation. We are dealing with a very significant project here that does have long life that's going to flow from it. The resource right now stands at 730,000 tonnes contained. Indicated is over 400,000 tonnes. We'll be looking to lift that component, the measured and indicated component of that resource, to over 500,000 tonnes of contained nickel. If we can do that, and we've stated that publicly, we'll be looking at targeting a 20-year project life, which is extending from where we were in the scoping study. So that is very significant, producing 20,000 tonnes of nickel a year, doing that for 20 years. There's not going to be too many operations globally that will be able to do that. So hence, again, come back to the message around the size and scale of this operation, the production level that's going to be there, the access to key markets, and we think we're on to a very, very good project. The resource should continue to grow over time out to over 1 million tonnes. The last 6 to 9 months have really been focused on infill drilling to lift that measured and indicated component of the resource for the feasibility study, allow our resource to be converted to reserves. But we've had significant growth over time in that resource. As you can see there, 560,000 tonnes was what we did the scoping study on. We're already at 730. As we drill down dip, and I'll show you some of the opportunities there, we really do feel that this resource will head out beyond 1 million tonnes of contained nickel metal. So in the Carajás you have a very deep plumbing system, as evidenced by what you see at Salobo mine. That's an IOCG mine, owned by Vale, very deep, drilling holes down around 1,500 metres deep. The system where we're in is in the same location, and there's no reason why the mineralisation at Jaguar does not continue at depth in the same way that it does at Salobo. Now, I'm not standing here to say that we've got the same sort of deposit, that we've got the same opportunity there. Salobo really is world class. But we really have scratched the surface as far as exploration goes. So there is plenty of opportunity that as we drill deeper over the next sort of 6, 12, 18 months that we are going to continue to find more mineralisation. So there's 3 sections through there, different parts of the deposit. Jaguar South on the left, Jaguar Central on the right, in the middle, Onça Preta on the right. You can see the pit outlines that run through the surface there. At your leisure, you can have a look at some of the grades that go with that. We think that then we can extend that into the underground, and from an exploration point of view, we are really driven by the downhole EM. It works a treat in this part of the world. When we get a downhole conductor, it's usually semi-massive and massive sulfides. We don't have false positives. Don't usually have any graphitic shales or anything like that that lights it up. So we feel that when we see a downhole conductor plate, we can drill it with confidence, and that will usually hit nickel sulfide mineralisation. Now, I won't be able to tell you what width and grade that is until I drill it, but it is a very powerful tool for our exploration focus, and we have our own equipment on site to enable us to do that. So you can sort of see Jaguar South on the left, Onça Preta on the right. There's some blue lines there. They are the conductor plates. We drill a hole. We do a survey on that. We extend that plate potentially 200, 250 metres below that deepest drilling. We're still seeing those plates continue at depth, hence why we're very confident that that resource will continue to grow out beyond 1 million tonnes contained. And that's just a view of those downhole conductor plates in long section at Jaguar South. So plenty of holes inside the pit, a number of holes now sitting just under the pit, and then you've got these downhole conductor plates that do extend even further with some really nice grades. Like there's an intersection there, 50 odd metres at 2% nickel that has that 17 metres at nearly 5% in it. And those are the sort of opportunities that we see within the resource base. So just coming back to the production side of things and the timeline that we've got, we are doing this resource, the new resource, by the end of Q3 this year. We've completed all the infill work that we need to do for that. We've already had pit optimisations to help it drive where that resource needs, or where that drilling needs to be for the resource. We've got to get the assays back from the lab, and then we'll get that resource out. We've got environmental approval work to do. We've got offtake work to continue discussion with, and we'll look to complete the definitive feasibility study by the end of March next year. That should lead to a final investment decision towards the end of Q3 and put us in a phase where we're really taking this project into production. So there's a lot to do. That the team on the ground is doing an amazing job. The team here in Perth is doing an amazing job, and we really look forward to bringing this project on stream. So just in closing, we are focused on nickel in Brazil. The project has a very low carbon footprint and probably goes a little bit lower from where we were in the scoping study as we roll out the DFS. It's an infrastructure-rich region. The Carajás has a lot of infrastructure. We're going to be able to benefit from that. We've got a good relationship with Vale. We think that that will create further opportunities over time. And with a long life project, 20,000 tonnes a year pushing out hopefully for 20 odd years, we're going to generate an enormous amount of cash and an enormous amount of value for our shareholders. So with that, I will close. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Darren. We do actually have time if there is any questions from the audience. No? Okay, well, I'll take that time back because we were a bit behind from the doors earlier. Thanks so much, Darren.